Coming at number 10 now, we have the whipping father. In Belgium and France, there is an old legend around a man called Pere FOUETTARD. The story goes back to the 12th century. This man spent his early years as an innkeeper, a kidnapper, and then a murderer. One day at the inn, 3 rich boys visited on their way to a religious boarding school. The man wanted their money, and so he kidnapped them and took them away to slit their throats. He then began to prepare them for some sort of human stew, but at the last moment, Saint Nicholas himself showed up and resurrected the 3 boys. That's right, Santa himself saved the day. Seeing this power, the man then repented and became Santa's partner. His job was to whip the bad boys and girls on Santa's naughty list. That makes the naughty list about 1,000 times worse, I think.
Coming in at number 9 is Father Christmas, the big jolly man himself. Now most people believe his origins can be traced back to Saint Nicholas, who we'll talk about later on. But through research I found out that Harper's Weekly magazine published what's meant to be the first ever illustration depicting the modern Santa Claus, and that was in the 1860s, so it's really not that modern. In that illustration he's wearing green robes, not the red ones we're used to, and he was even mixed with the legend of the Green Man. The Green Man was this person who ruled the forests and woods in pagan belief, and last time I checked, pagans and Christianity are not the same thing. In Germany, for example, Father Christmas had a dark side, and that came in the form of KRAMPUS, who was said to be his evil helper. He was the bad cop to Santa's good cop. So Santa was either Saint Nicholas, he was either a pagan forest man, or he was a Batman and Robin duo with KRAMPUS. Any of which are that good actually, now that we think about it. Santa Claus, you've done me wrong. Betrayed me.
Sliding to number 8 spot, we have Belsnickel. Now, most people will think of The Office when they think of Belsnickel, but there's actually a weird and creepy legend tied to the character. It's an old German legend that started in the early 1800s that this old man in fur would deliver cakes, candies, and nuts to the good children. So he'd kind of act as if like he's Santa giving gifts to the kids on the nice list. Except he was some creepy old man and he would just carry around a whip, and he would actually whip the bad children on the night of Christmas Eve. The character was based on an older German myth of a servant of Saint Nicholas. Apparently the figure is actually preserved in Pennsylvania Dutch communities and Brazilian German communities. Listen, everyone can believe what they want, but no man is coming up in my house and whipping my kids. If anyone's gonna do that, it's me. That's probably why I'm not a mom.
Number 7, like I was saying during the intro of this video, Santa Claus might actually be Satan in disguise. The devil is Santa in the flesh. I mean, how terrifying is that? Don't believe me? Well, how do you think that he got his name Santa? It seems pretty random. Maybe it's not so random. It's just Satan rearranged. I mean, why is this man sliding down people's chimneys and breaking into people's houses? Isn't that trespassing? Santa literally has a naughty list so he can keep an eye on them. He gives naughty people useless coal just to mess with them so they feel bad about themselves. It's believed that Santa was inspired by characteristics of the devil.
Moving on to number 6 now, we have Bloody Axe. This story actually comes from an old horror comic, and the pictures you're seeing now are from just that. It's written from the perspective of an 8-year-old boy. He would lie very still under the old moth-eaten quilt his mother had made for him. He would be wide awake and listen out for sounds. On one Christmas Eve, he heard the front door closing and the clomp, clomp, clomp of his father's mud-caked boots. And then there was the sound of dripping on the stairs. Drip, drip, drip. Then his father would pass by his doorway and the light would cast his shadow on the bedroom wall and the shadow of the bloody axe he always carried in his hands. At breakfast the next morning, he slowly asked his mother where his father had been last night. She looked at him with sad eyes but never said a word. By the end of this story though, we learn that there is a connection with the rumours of the nearby axe murderer and his father's return every night. Let's just say it doesn't have a pretty ending.
Coming in at number 5 are Christmas parties. Now everyone loves those cheeky Christmas parties where there's Secret Santa and a bunch of alcoholic hot chocolate and everyone's just getting fat and drunk. Who wouldn't love that? I love that. Well, firstly, I'm gonna hit you with some facts. Now Christmas wasn't always celebrated on the 25th. The birth of Christ was only confirmed on that date 300 years after the fact. Before that, his birth was marked on at least 3 different dates, one in March, one in Jan, and one in June. It was just all over the place. Coincidentally, Coincidentally, December 25th was also the same date of the Roman festival of Saturnalia and the winter solstice. This festival was dedicated to the Roman god Saturn, and it involved continuous unrestrained drinking, the role reversals between masters and their slaves, criminals were allowed to run rampant and do whatever they wanted, schools were closed, the rich were encouraged to give presents to the poor so they wouldn't be robbed. Christmas parties are wholesome now, but they sign off as proper shit shows.
Alright, at the number 4 spot now, we have La Befana. La Befana is an old Italian Christmas witch. Her story comes from Italian folklore that some say dates right back to Roman times. There are many origin stories for her, but one of the stranger ones says she wasn't always a witch. She used to be just an ordinary woman with a child who she loved with all her heart. Tragically, her child died, and the grief sent Befana crazy. She heard the news that Jesus had been born though, and so she set out to look for him, thinking that he was actually her son. She found him and gave him gifts. In return, Jesus gave her the gift of being the mother to every child in Italy, and to give them gifts at Christmas. So, if you're ever in Italy on Christmas Eve and catch sight of a broom, say hi to the witch.
Coming in at number 3, we have the Ghostly Gathering. Poland's beautiful castle, the Wawel Royal Castle, was built high upon Wawel Hill in the 1500s. Old Polish legend says that within the belly of the hill there is a cave where an ancient great dragon used to live, although the fearsome beast was defeated. The hill is shrouded in mystery and magic and is an important spot for the history of the Polish nation. It seems that the urban legend also has it that in the hill there is a grand chamber, and in that chamber on every Christmas Eve evening all of the former kings of Poland hold a special ghostly council. I don't know what happens to the queens, I guess they're not invited. Anyway, it's said that they produce a magical energy that protects Krakow.
Alright, at the number 2 spot now we have Strageli. Strageli is the sort of demonic looking helper to Perchta the witch, someone we talked about earlier in the video. You might wonder how Perchta manages to slice open all those naughty kids. Well, Strageli helps. He will go around and eat the offerings left out by people in the hope of Perchta's blessing. If he comes across any naughty kids before Perchta does, he will rob them of everything they own, throw them up into the air, and then tear them into pieces. That makes Perchta's belly slitting almost seem normal, except not really. None of this seems normal. And finally, number 1 now, we have Purple Fingernails. This one comes from the Scary for Kids website, and I'll read it exactly as I found it. There was once a little girl who had a large collection of dolls. One Christmas, she saw a doll in the window of a department store that she absolutely had to have. It had long, flowing blonde hair and a lovely blue dress, but the thing that impressed her the most about the doll was that it had lovely, bold, purple fingernails. When Christmas morning came, she was delighted to find the doll with the purple fingernails lying under the Christmas tree. She played with it all day, and when she went to sleep, she put it on the table at her bedside. That night, the little girl was awakened by strange noises. It was still dark outside. She looked over for her doll, but it was nowhere to be found. The girl, puzzled, got out of bed and walked into the hallway. The door to her parents' room was ajar, and she pushed it open softly and looked in. Her parents appeared to be sleeping soundly, and so she went back to bed. In the morning, she saw the doll with the purple fingernails was sitting on the table by her bed, exactly where she had left it. She assumed that she must have just been having a bad dream, but when she went into her parents' room that morning, she found them both lying dead in a pool of blood. There were 2 purple doll fingernails stabbed into their hearts.
At number 10, we have Krampus. Whoa. I'm actually scripting and filming this video on December the 5th, and researchers just told me that December 5th is Krampus night. What? Now I'm pretty scared. Krampus is like the anti-Santa. He's a half goat, half demon. Maybe he's a messenger from the devil himself, or maybe he is Lucifer incarnate. Who knows? All we do know is that legends of the Krampus are rife in Austria, Bavaria, northern Italy and Slovenia at Christmas time, and that the monster is said to punish kids who misbehave. How does he punish them, I hear you ask? With a severe beating, that's how. Thanks, Krampus. With the worst kids though, he's said to drown them or send them to hell. Fun. As I said, for me right now, tonight is Krampus night, which means that people in Northeast Europe will be out celebrating dressed like Krampuses. Krampi? Crampy? The problem with the Krampus parades and celebrations are that often people get way too carried away and actually beat people while they're in character. I think they need to slow down and stop channeling the Krampus.
Moving on to number 9 now, we have Christmas tree decorations. This is a story from Scary for Kids about a girl called Juliet who was decorating a Christmas tree. Her mum was working late, and so when she finished with the tree, she sat down to watch some TV. It was then that she heard a scratching noise at the door. She looked through the peephole to see a man outside. He was a large, bearded guy in a red suit with fluffy white trim. He banged on the door loudly. Juliet asked, "Who's there?" The man said he was Santa Claus and that he wanted to come in because he was cold and tired and hungry. Juliet didn't believe him. She told him that her mother wasn't home and she wanted him to leave. His face began to go red and twist with anger. He knocked even harder and growled,
"It's Santa Claus, Juliet. Have you laid out some milk and cookies for me, Juliet? You know how much Santa loves his milk and cookies."
Honestly, it's a creepy story from start to finish, and it only gets worse for Juliet from there. All I'll say is make sure you don't read it right after you've eaten. Moving on to number 8 now, we have The Figure. This one comes from Arthur H, who shared his story on cagemom.com. He said, "My mother, to whom I was very close, passed away in 1964 when I was 17 years old. I left home that year and moved to Ontario from Nova Scotia. In 1969 I met a girl who I will call Karen, and we got married in March of 1970. In December of 1971 we were expecting our first child. We were living in a small 1.5 bedroom bungalow. There was a fireplace in the living room. My wife and I loved the fireplace and we had it lit every night. It was Christmas Eve 1971 and we had just finished putting the gifts under the tree, and a nice fire gave off a beautiful glow. On the tree, one string of lights which was supposed to flash had stopped several days before. It was 5 minutes to midnight when the fireplace suddenly just about went out and a string of lights started to flash and the other lights stopped flashing. My wife and I were sitting on the floor and it had become very chilly in the room. I looked over to my lazy boy chair and a figure was sitting there. My mother, with a big beautiful smile on her face. My wife, who had never met my mother, said she could see the same thing. This ghost never spoke, but just kept looking at me and my wife and smiling. At 12 midnight, the fire in the fireplace started up again and the lights on the tree stopped flashing and the others started flashing again. I looked over in the chair and the ghost was gone. No matter what I did to those Christmas lights, they never flashed again. Okay, at the number 7 spot now, we have Belsnickel. This story comes from southwestern Germany. Belsnickel is said to be a man who wears rugged furs and a mask. He has a long tongue and carries around a switch in his hand to beat naughty children with at Christmas. A switch is a piece of wood or some sticks that are usually used in beating punishments. He would have treats for the good children, but even then, he would often beat them as they reached to grab the treats off the floor. I think I'd just pass on the treats altogether.
So urban legend has it that Santa Claus, Father Christmas, Père Noël, whatever you want to call him, the legend says that he has a naughty list and a nice list, which is pretty concerning, not least to mention that he sees you when you're sleeping and he allegedly knows when you're awake. Creepy. Those on the nice list are rewarded with gifts and those on the naughty list receive lumps of coal. Coal is something that you throw in a fire, which basically seems like a thinly veiled threat from Santa to me. The whole thing is like a weird mind control game for kids. There are allegedly ways to check the naughty and nice list too. I went on the North Pole Times to check if I was nice, and I was, but then I started checking other names and, well, this happened. You sure about that, Santa? You sure?
Halfway through the list at number 5 is Perchta. So I didn't know that there are evil spirits that come out around Christmas time. Apparently this channel is trying to ruin the holidays for me. There's an urban legend around a dual-gendered spirit named Perchta who will either appear as a beautiful woman or a haggard crone. I'm going to refer to it as a she for this one because I'm going to pretend that it is the beautiful woman. Apparently she would visit homes throughout the 12 days of Christmas and she would determine whether they have behaved all year. You know, the classic naughty and nice list. However, there is nothing classic about hers because if they were a good kid, she would leave them a silver coin. However, if they were bad, she would slit their bellies open, remove their guts, and stuff them with straw and pebbles. That is a little bit intense. I would literally be terrified of December if this was going on every year. However, this would make a really cool scary movie. I might be onto something here.
Alright everyone, moving on to number 4 now. We have the clown puppet. There was once 3 sisters, aged 15, 12 and 7. They told their parents what they wanted for their Christmas gift of choice. The oldest asked for a laptop, the middle for an iPad, and the youngest for a small doll. On Christmas Day, the oldest and middle daughters got what they asked for. They were over the moon. The youngest daughter didn't receive a doll though. Instead, she got a clown puppet. She thought it was cute and so she kept it. 2 days later, the youngest daughter disappeared. The next Christmas, the oldest daughter asked for an iPad and the middle child asked for a clown puppet. Sure enough, 2 days later, she disappeared. The next Christmas, the last remaining daughter asked for a clown puppet in memory of her sisters. She disappeared as well. The heartbroken parents never recovered. They eventually became so poor they had to sell everything for money. One day they went into the attic to look for items to sell. That's when they saw, in the darkness at the very back, the clown puppet was sitting on a throne made from lollipop sticks, arranged all around it were the severed heads and limbs of the 3 missing girls.
Filling our number 3 slot is mistletoe. Okay, spilling some tea here. I've only ever been kissed once under mistletoe, and that was when I was 12 and it was my first boyfriend. I had butterflies, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Now typically the mistletoe is a plant you're meant to be kissed under, but back in the day it was seen as a symbol of friendship by the Druids. Druids were meant to be religious leaders, mediators between humans and God. They were types of law keepers. This symbol was not received well by religious leaders in England, and so it was banned. Years later, the York Minster Church started holding mistletoe service each winter, where criminals could come to the church with their own sprig of mistletoe and be pardoned for their crimes. So before it was a romantic plant, it was a criminal's God-sent herb. Good to know.
At number 2, we have Galliganlaurus. Very cool name, but not a cool guy. This creature would just show up on Christmas and terrorize villages for 2 weeks and then disappear. Very rude. Galliganlaurus is a goblin that lives in packs under the earth. This monster kind of looks like a little monkey creature thing with razor sharp teeth, like a little goblin. And to top it off, it will come and steal your baby. If you have a baby born between the 26th of December and the 6th of January, you better watch out, because this little demon will try to claw its way into your home and take your newborn baby and then turn it into one of the little monkey goblins like itself. You guys like it when I do this? Remember those commercials that were like Lego My Ego? This is like that, but you would be crying because a monster stole your baby.
Finally, number 1, Krampus might actually be real. Krampus is half goat, half demon creature.
Everybody, hold on to each other.
Krampus usually comes out during the Christmas season, and he punishes children who have misbehaved, so exactly like how Santa Claus does. Maybe Santa gives Krampus his naughty list. I mean, did you guys ever wonder what Santa does with his naughty list?
Starting off with number 10 is caroling. Now I've never had any carolers come to my door, but that's probably because I live in an apartment and that would be weird. But it's been a thing since the 17th century, but it wasn't as nice and cheerful as it is now. Carolers or wassailers used to arrive at people's houses completely unannounced and demand the residents give them their finest drink and food. And these demands weren't just verbal. Sometimes they'd threaten violence or rape, they'd physically destroy the property and the homeowner's items, and sing lyrics like, "If you don't open up your door, we'll lay it flat upon the floor." One Catholic minister was against caroling, so much so that he rallied against it, saying it drove people to rioting and fornication and everything that just wasn't Christian. Who knew carolers were actually just dicks?
Alright, moving on to number 9 now, we have Krampus. Some of you guys may have seen the 2015 horror movie this one is based on. The story comes from southeastern Europe and dates back hundreds of years, and it's pretty terrifying. The Krampus is a horned half-goat, half-demon figure. At Christmas, he punishes children who have misbehaved. He would take children, beat and torture them before kidnapping them and taking them to his secret lair to just continue beating and torturing them. In modern times, there has been a bit of a movement to stop telling kids the story of Krampus because it scares them so much. Probably scares some of the adults too.
Coming in at number 8, we have Farmhand Rupert, and you don't want to party with him. Farmhand Rupert is a terrifying foe. He's a mean-spirited trickster of a man. Sure, we're going to talk about the naughty list and the nice list, but Farmhand Rupert has a different way of dealing with insolent children. As part of German legend, Farmhand Rupert walks around the hood, or the countryside, and asks unsuspecting children if they can pray. If they can, he gives them a delicious gingerbread gift. If they can't, he gives them random pieces of junk. If they refuse, what does he do? He beats them with a bag of ashes. Thanks for the beating, Farmhand Rupert, you gingerbread wielding creep. Coming in at number 7, we have the Elf on the Shelf. Okay, listen up. In my opinion, the Elf on the Shelf is absolutely terrifying. It's become very popular with parents these days, but the gangly looking elf has been in popularity since the book of the same name came out in 2005. The book is all about elves who visit kids' homes and watch them to determine whether or not they're naughty or nice. The book now comes with actually little creepy blue-eyed elves, and you can have them in your home. The product description says that they are Santa's eyes and ears in your house. Hello, surveillance state of Santa. You're invading my privacy. A police state is actually no laughing matter, and the Elf on the Shelf is like a threat to kids. Do you seriously want them to grow up believing that they're being what? I don't know. Are we normalizing this? I don't think we should. While we're talking about Elf on the Shelf, why don't we talk about the naughty list in general at number...
At number 7 we have La Befana. What happens when you cross the Wicked Witch of the West with Santa Claus? Well, you get La Befana. She does a lot of things that Santa does. She goes around from house to house and leaves gifts for good kids and coal for the bad ones. She uses magic to get around and has great fashion sense. But she also does a bunch of witch things, like riding around on a broomstick and being dressed in all black. I know it's winter, but you can spice it up a little, girl. Throw in some nice greens, some nice reds, all those little things. On top of all this, she doesn't only leave coal for bad kids, she leaves bad luck. What are you doing? Maybe these kids are being bad because they have a terrible home life? I don't think you should be leaving them more bad luck. That just doesn't make things any better. Just maybe help them out. The coal's enough.
At number 6 are baubles. I've literally always wanted to decorate a Christmas tree. It's been my dream for my entire life and I've never done it. Just remember, you guys, if I die and I didn't do it, just remember my soul will not rest. It will come back to haunt you. Now, traditionally, the act of hanging toys and treats from your Christmas tree was German in origin, but baubles and glass-blown spheres date back to the 17th century and originated from a very spooky idea in Britain and Ireland: witch balls. Yup. Now, witch balls were these glass spheres that had silver inside them and were believed to shoo away evil spirits. When they were first created, they were put in windows to neutralize the evil eye of any passing witch by reflecting it back at her or confusing her with the pattern. People thought the bright colors of the balls would entice and trap the witch and other dark spirits inside of it. Some people even filled them with holy water for even more protection. Either way, they somehow moved from the window to the tree. I don't know how, but I'm guessing it was because people wanted even more protection during a holiday that was so very holy. I think that's a pretty good guess.
Number 5 now, we have the Carol Singers. This is a story based on The Vanishing House by Bernard Capes. The storyteller said that when they were a boy, their grandfather and father were alcoholics who never worked. They could play instruments though. On one Christmas Eve, they took him Christmas caroling with them, door to door. It was a dark night, snow was falling and the wind cut through them like a knife. They came to a big mansion decorated with Christmas lights. The grandfather knocked on the front door and they began to play some old Christmas carols. When the door finally swung open, in the dim light they could see a young woman stood holding a tray of glasses in her hands. She picked up a glass and handed it to the grandfather, who excitedly took it. The boy looked up to a window above and saw a hideous face peering out of the shadows. He looked back at the woman in the doorway and her face had twisted hideously too. They would live to regret the day they ever came to that mansion and the grandfather taking that glass.
Number 4, candy canes were created to symbolize Jesus. The candy cane is in the shape of a J to stand for Jesus, and the red on the candy cane represents the blood of Christ. I mean, this is pretty intense. The cane is like wood, and wood is like the cross that Jesus was on. So candy canes aren't just symbolizing Jesus, it's actually symbolizing the moment he was nailed to the cross. If this is all true, that's pretty morbid to think about. I mean, I love candy canes and I don't think about all that stuff.
Next up at number 3 now, we have Mari Lwyd. This tradition originates from South Wales in the the UK and involves a zombie horse. Yes, Marie is a zombie horse. Marie would rise from the dead at Christmas and wander the streets with human zombies to remind the living of their existence. Marie wants to get into people's houses, and the only way to keep her out would be to engage her in a battle of wits through rhyming. That's right, to stop this skeletal zombie horse from entering your home at Christmas, you basically have to rap battle it. If that doesn't sound like a terrifying nightmare, I don't know what does.
Now at number 2 is Good King Wenceslas. Now when I first read that title, I was like, what is this obscure Christmas carol song that no one's heard of? But then I YouTubed it and I was like, wait, I do know this song. Kinda goes like, when the snow lay round about, deep and crisp and even. Now hopefully you guys recognize the song now based on my lovely a cappella version, and now we're gonna just move swiftly on and pretend I didn't do that. So this song is supposedly about a nice king who helps out a poor peasant during a snowstorm, but the inspiration for the song was a real person who died a horrible death. Now Wenceslas I, Duke of Bohemia, was born back in 907 AD. His father died, so he was raised by his mum, who was the daughter of a pagan tribal chief. Fast forward to 935 AD, Wenceslas's brother gave orders to murder him, so he was stabbed repeatedly with a lance while praying in church, and then he was dismembered right in front of the chapel. I feel like if you get killed in a church, surely that's like your straight ticket to heaven, right? That has to be your straight ticket to heaven. If you get murdered in a holy act, surely you go to heaven. I'm gonna put my money on it. Wenceslas, I see you.
And finally, number 1 now, we have the Yule Cat. If you guys remember the Yule Lads from earlier on in the video, well, this is their cat that they bring along with them to terrorize people at Christmas. The Yule Cat is big and fearsome, exactly what you'd expect when its owners are child-eating mountain trolls. Unlike many of the other ones on our list, you can't reason with the Yule Cat. There is only one thing a child can do at Christmas to not be visited by the Yule Cat. The cat is said to eat children who do not receive any clothes at Christmas. So guys, just be thankful next time you get some socks from a relative. They may have just saved your life from the Yule Cat. Starting off at number 10 now, we have the sock puppet. This one comes from Ireland, where many years ago a man owned all the land around a village and rented it out to the poor farmers there for a profit. He was very kind to his own family but brutal to the other villagers. He made a fortune from this cruelty. The villagers hatched a plan to overthrow him one day. One Christmas night he threw a lavish party for his friends while the villagers were starving in the cold. A villager arrived bearing a gift. He said it was a present for the rich man's daughter. The girl opened it to find a sock puppet that the villager had knitted. He asked for some food in return. The rich man gave him a single potato. The girl loved the sock puppet though. She named it Charlie. She took it to bed that night. When her father went to check on her, she was fast asleep. But he noticed that Charlie was still on her hand and its plastic eyes were staring right at him. The villagers were about to get their bloody revenge on the rich man thanks to a murderous sock puppet called Charlie.
Alright, moving on, number 9, let's talk about mincemeat pies. These delicious looking desserts right here. Well, you might not actually be saying that for long. Well, the mincemeat pies has become a very popular Christmas dish, while legends has it that these desserts were invented back in the 16th century by cannibals. The recipe today calls for fruits, spices, cinnamon, nutmeg. There's also herbs in there, but let's just say that those weren't the only ingredients in this. Well, there was a time where these pies used to have meat in them, but it's rumored that that was stopped so people didn't have to guess, what type of meat was actually in these pies, because you never know if people tried to follow the old traditions and maybe slip in some human meat.
Alright, moving on to number 8 now, we have the Yule Lads. These figures come from Icelandic folklore. There are 13 Yule Lads. They're the sons of mountain trolls who have a bit of a taste for the flesh of naughty children. The 13 of them harass and pull devilish pranks on people, making their lives a misery. Each one of them has a different job. One of them will steal your food, another will wait for you under your bed, another slams doors, while another simply watches you through windows. How creepy is that? For me though, perhaps the scariest one is the candle stealer. He follows children around so that he can steal their candles, leaving them in the dark. Although in modern times I imagine he's figured out light switches.
Filling on number 7 slot is St. Stephen's Day, which is the 26th of December. Now Irish Christmas celebrations go beyond the 25th and up until very recently used to involve bird murder. Yes, you heard that right. St. Stephen's Day used to be celebrated by killing a wren, putting it on top of a decorated pole, parading it from house to house while singing and demanding money for their deed. It's like the meme where it's like, no one. Irish people demanding money for killing a bird. Anyway, going on on the wren or Jenny hunting became a thing because apparently Saint Stephen himself was betrayed by a wren, and the practice continued till the 1930s, which really wasn't even 100 years ago, you guys. So really, we need to stop bird murder. We should have stopped bird murder a long time ago.
Next up at number 6 now we have Frau Perchta. This is the German and Austrian story of a witch who visits people's homes during the 12 days after Christmas. She's known for being particularly hideous and also what she does when she visits people's homes. If a child has been good all year, they may receive a small gift, but if they have been bad, she would slit open the children's bellies, remove their stomach and guts, and stuff the hole with straw and pebbles. She would also do the same to anyone that ate something on her feast day other than fish and gruel. I don't even know where I get my hands on some gruel, so I might be screwed, but I'm also not a kid, so yay.
Coming in at number 5, we have the Portuguese ghost dinner. In Portugal, people get up early on Christmas morning and have a feast for the dead called consoda. It is to honour ancestors and dead relatives. Families will leave out extra plates of food as offerings for those who have passed. The offerings appease the dead and ensure good fortune for the household. If the feast isn't held for the ghosts and offerings are not made, well, it could be a bad year.
At number 4 are stockings. Now I've really always wanted my own stocking with my name on it just hanging above the fireplace, but alas, my dreams are still just dreams. Now filling stockings with treats is all fun and games now, but its origins are rooted in poverty and illness. Who would have thought? The tradition apparently started when a 4th century bishop, St. Nicholas, heard an old man complaining about how he didn't have any money to supply each of his 3 daughters with a dowry. And back then, dowries were a very big deal. Any girl that didn't have a dowry wouldn't be allowed to get married and probably would have become a concubine in order to sustain herself. Now St. Nicholas's heart went out for this old man so much that he snuck into their house at night and saw that they had hung some stockings above the fireplace to dry. He stuffed them with bags of gold, and the impoverished family lived happily ever after.
Next up at number 3 now we have the Griefer. He told them the story of the grifter, the most awful thing in the world. He lives in a cave at the North Pole. The coldest, wettest place on earth is where the grifter makes his home. He sleeps in the wreck of a ship. He doesn't mind the cold and he doesn't mind the wet, but the thing he hates most of all is to hear someone say his name. He has very good ears and they get bigger every time his name is spoken anywhere on earth. Sometimes his ears get so big he can use them to fly. At this point, Steffa said she didn't like the story. It was scaring her. It's too late now, the mother said. We've already mentioned his name. The grifter is probably on his way to our house this very minute. Those words will come to haunt them before this story ends.
Taking over the number 2 spot is the legend of GRYLA. What's more disturbing than a lady witch eating a bunch of children for pure entertainment? Absolutely nothing. The legend originated in Iceland, and the tale goes that a giant named GRYLA has the ability to sense which children have misbehaved all year round. Apparently, she keeps a record of bad children, and come Christmas time, she comes down from her mountain and kidnaps them in a sack. Then she takes them back up to her mountain and she eats them. Like literally cannibal. Eats them, the hills of ice kind of stuff. Word on the street says that she will sometimes just eat them whole, or she will turn them into a stew. She is one Christmas visitor that you do not want to see.
Finally, at number 1 is down the chimney. So hopefully the only person coming down your chimney is Santa Claus, because we really don't have time for any other shady assholes to be coming through there. But we have had a lot of shady assholes creeping into the homes of families through chimneys, and it is not okay. European legends tell us of malicious supernatural creatures that used to break into houses via the chimney. In the Middle Ages, it was thought that witches came into houses through chimneys and robbed cribs and the babies inside them. In Greece, the Kallikantzaroi goblins were the ones that crawled through the chimney and terrorized families and just stole stuff from them.
Starting us off at number 10 is the legend of the poisonous poinsettia. They are a very popular Christmas decoration because their leaves turn a bright red color when they bloom throughout their flowering period, which is November to March. It's safe to say that millions of them are sold each year, but you might think twice after I tell you about the urban legend that is linked to them. For decades now, there has been a dark myth that has people believing one poinsettia leaf can kill a human child. It has been a dire warning that goes around every Christmas, warning people not to bring these plants home if they have kids or pets. Some people believe that the plant actually contains a deadly poison. Apparently, there has been a reported case that when a child even rubbed up against one of the plants, his face broke out into this brutal rash. So if anyone buys you one of these plants for Christmas, they are probably trying to kill you.
Coming in at number 9, we have Black Peter, or ZWARTE. This has been in the news quite a bit recently because it is pretty below par these days. Black Peter is very scary to look at, but also because he is a racist stereotype. A lot of people have accused the people of the Netherlands and Belgium, where he's particularly celebrated, of perpetuating a racial stereotype. Blacking up just isn't cricket. Other than that though, Peter is a benevolent fellow who gives out candy to good boys and girls and is a great friend of St. Nicholas. Doesn't sound so scary, right? A lot of people want to keep Black Peter alive and thriving, but others vehemently protest him. What do you guys think?
At number 8 we have Yola Katurin. This is a big cat that will eat you the day after Christmas if you wear your new clothes too soon. What? Why? I have so many questions about this thing and I don't get it. I'm so confused. It's not like a tiger or a lion or something. It's just a massive house cat and it wants to eat people with fresh clothes because I think they taste better. On top of this massive cat killing humans, it's owned by GRYLA the troll, a nasty character from folklore who we might break down in this video. I don't know.
Next up at number 7 now, we have The Boy Who Killed Santa Claus. This one was written by Mark Allen Gunnels. It's about a 7-year-old boy called Henry Childers. He asked his mom to stay up past 10 on Christmas Eve one year, but she warned him that if he didn't go to sleep, Santa wouldn't come that night. He had hoped that Santa would get things right this year. Last year, he asked for an Xbox, but he got a PlayStation instead. His mom told him not to worry, Santa was probably all out of Xboxes, but Henry had not forgotten. Henry had a rage inside of him. He had been plotting all year. He knew he was too little to fight Santa, but he also knew that Santa liked to have milk and cookies. He also knew that food and drink can always be poisoned. Finish the story to find out what happened to the boy who killed Santa Claus. It's a good one.
Number 6, Santa Claus might be very depressed, and he might be suicidal as well, and Christmas might come to an end. Santa every year has to fly around giving gifts to the nice kids. By Christmas time, he has to be as fat as possible because that's what society wants him to be, especially the kids. So Santa has to eat all day and all night, and he has to eat as many cookies as possible to train his body for Christmas time, because everyone leaves cookies for him. With all the strict rules and the same thing over and over again, Santa might be super depressed, and it's all our fault. Now, that is something hard to live with. Think about how much Santa has to go through just for our greediness. We want Santa to do it all, even the impossible. We make him eat all year round and then say, okay, now I want you to come down this chimney. Of course, it's the smallest chimney. Well, let's just hope Santa finds his happy place once again and nothing bad happens to him.
Okay, at the number 5 spot now, we have Hans Trapp. Hans is essentially the Christmas boogeyman in one part of France. He is said to be the anti-Santa, although he started out life as a normal man. He was rich, greedy, and all-round evil. He worshipped Satan and was then expelled from the Catholic Church because of it. Eventually, he was exiled to the forests and used to catch and eat children by posing as a scarecrow. One day, he was about to eat a boy he had captured, but was struck by lightning and killed as a punishment from God. That didn't stop him though, and he is still said to visit young children at Christmas, dressed as a scarecrow to see how they've behaved.
At number 4 we have Le Père Fouettard. Okay, so the French also have an evil henchman who would follow around Father Christmas, and his backstory is about as dark as they come. The Père Fouettard was a professional butcher, and one year he was running a little low on meat, so he found the next best thing: 3 human children. I guess their meat is tender or something? I don't know. Yes, this maniac was going to chop up some 10th graders and cook them up, but right when it seemed all hope was lost, Santa burst in and saved the boys. Because of his shame and defeat at the hands of Saint Nick, he was forever his slave. He had to do whatever Santa wanted, and Santa was like, "You're terrifying, so why don't you scare all the kids who misbehave with your massive butcher knife?" And Le Père Fouettard was like, "Yeah, I can do that."
Cruising into number 3 is werewolves. I know what you're thinking. What do werewolves have to do with Christmas? If they are going to be linked to any kind of holiday, it's probably going to be Halloween. But I'm here to surprise you with the news that there is a dark myth behind werewolves and Christmas Day. The urban legend goes that anyone who was born on Christmas Day would turn into a werewolf. The 1961 movie called The Curse of the Werewolf explains the legend that being born on December 25th is mocking Jesus Christ, so you must be punished. But you don't turn into like an actual werewolf, you're a human who gets possessed and turns into this like werewolf-like monster thing. So you better plan out your pregnancies and hope your baby isn't born on Christmas Day.
Coming in at number 2 we have Frau Perchta. Merry Christmas! Hop hop hip hurrah! Oh look, it's the organ witch, Frau Perchta. Don't like her. She can stay away from me. This nightmare from Germany and Austria appears during the 12 days of Christmas right up until the Epiphany. She is said to be a direct descendant of the goddess of nature, and she generally lives in the woods all year round outside of the 12 days of Christmas, where she enacts judgment on the townsfolk. It is said that she loves to reward good people, but she has gruesome punishments for the sinful ones. She scoops out their internal organs and replaces them with garbage. Thanks, Frau Perchta. That'll learn them. She also isn't the greatest looker, not that I'm judging. I am, however, judging the organ scooping though, that's just uncalled for.
And for the number 1 spot we have GRYLA. Legend of GRYLA stretches all the way back before Christmas, but Christmas wrapped her up in another way to scare the hell out of kids. Holy poop your pants, she is scary. So remember that creepy cat we talked about earlier? Well, this is her owner. She's a troll that lives in the mountains, and she's a giant, and she comes down during Christmas, and she will come right into town and steal kids. There's not even a naughty or nice thing about it. She just starts grabbing kids and putting them into a sack. She doesn't even care. She doesn't care who you are, she's just hungry. She's like every college kid who's scarfing down ramen trying to stay alive until they finish their exams. If you're one of the unlucky bunch who gets stolen and taken back to her lair, don't be worried about her grinding your bones to make her bread or baking you into a cake. She's gonna eat you whole. She's gonna suck your whole body down like the Sarlacc pit, and you're gonna be digested slowly. Very slowly. At number 10 we have Belsnickel. What if I read them all out like I was Borat? Hey Belsnickel! That would be good, you guys would like that. I bet you didn't know this, but Santa used to have a sidekick. Belsnickel used to be the Robin to Santa's Batman. The two would travel around the world to give candies and presents to kids. He sounds like a good guy. Why would he be on this list? Well, Belsnickel had his own way of doing business. Firstly, in the legend of Belsnickel, this guy wouldn't wear a nice red suit and sleigh bells. No, he would wear worn down rags. This is a terrible choice because it's so cold out on Christmas. You should choose something that is more appropriate for the weather. And also, you only work one day a year, dude. You couldn't find something nice to wear on that one day you have to go out. He also would wear a mask with a long tongue so people couldn't figure out who he was. This guy wasn't in it for the fame. Probably the scariest part about him is he would carry a long wooden stick that he would use to beat kids who've been bad. God, he really wanted to take the parenting to a new level. He's like, you guys aren't going to do it properly, so I'm going to do it for you. At number 9 we have Tomate. I'm having fun. Believe it or not, Christmas isn't just a big deal in North America, it's all over the world. Each region that celebrates Christmas has their own urban legends to go along with it. In Sweden they have Tomate. This is a magical fairy or sprite who goes around and visits people on Christmas Eve to leave them gifts and just hang out. The Tomate is supposed to be a symbol of a good winter harvest and a safeguard for all the animals on the farm. His actual form is unknown, but he usually appears to human as a short gnome little dude with a long beard and he's old and stuff. On Christmas Eve it would be tradition to leave a bowl of porridge out for Tomate. If you forgot to do this, he would curse your land by killing all your crops and livestock. All over some porridge? Dude, chill, like I've had porridge. It sucks. It's no reason to go berserk and ruin someone's livelihood.
At number 8 we have milk and cookies. Santa Claus is a lucky guy, man. He's getting all these cookies and milk from every house he visits. Honestly, no wonder he has that much energy to just go around the world. But this tradition was actually rooted in everyone being poor during the Great Depression. What a plot twist, I know. Leaving cookies and milk and maybe some carrots for reindeers originated in America during the Great Depression. Since most families were going through major economic hardship, parents tried to teach their kids that it was important to give to others even when they didn't have much to give, and to obviously show gratitude for any present that they did get that year. But 80 years later, everyone's still doing it out of the niceness of their hearts, or maybe they just want to bribe Santa for better presents, but it's not gonna work, my man. That's gonna get you straight on the naughty list, and you're not getting any presents for that. Facts. Straight facts.
Coming in at number 7, we have The Elf on the Shelf. Okay, listen up. In my opinion, The Elf on the Shelf is absolutely terrifying. It's become very popular with parents these days, but the gangly looking elf has been in popularity since the book of the same name came out in 2005. The book is all about elves who visit kids' homes and watch them to determine whether or not they're naughty or nice. The book now comes with actually little creepy blue-eyed elves, and you can have them in your home. The product description says that they are Santa's eyes and ears in your house. Hello, surveillance state of Santa. You're invading my privacy. A police state is actually no laughing matter, and the elf on the shelf is like a threat to kids. Do you seriously want them to grow up believing that they're being what? I don't know.
At number 6 we have Elf on a Shelf. I never had one of these in my house when I was a kid, and I'm happy because I hate these little things. elf on a shelf is an American tradition where you put a little elf on a shelf and he spies on the kids in the house and then tells Santa if they're being naughty or nice. This guy is a snitch. He spends all his time being a rat. Don't trust this little elf, man. Apparently, if a child touches them, they lose their magical powers. So don't forget, in the relationship with you and the elf, you have the power. If you see this little dude spying on you, then let him know if he doesn't go back and tell Santa you've been good, you'll take his powers away. At number 5 we have Krampus. Seems like every character who has ever gotten popular has an evil version of themselves. Superman has Bizarro, Hulk has the Abomination, and I am the good version of our fellow most amazing host Ayman Hassan, who is evil to her core. And Santa Claus is no different. He's got Krampus, who sounds like some grumpy old man. This guy does exactly what you think an evil Santa would do. He tortures kids who are on the naughty list, which seems like a bit harsh. Do you think they had a pitch meeting where this guy was like, I know you do the whole coal in the stocking thing, but what about we torture them to death? And Santa was like, man, can you get that dude with the stick back in here? This guy is like, oh, this is so over the top. You're too much, buddy. We'll beat him. We're not gonna torture him to death. My God. Krampus has a demonic body, kind of looks like a goat man thing. If he was in an episode of South Park, he would be called Man Goat Christmas. Half man, half goat, half Christmas.
Coming into number 4, we have Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn had a bit of a hard life, didn't she? Historically speaking, sometimes by some people she's kind of frowned on for being a strumpet, but like in actuality, King Henry VIII was an abhorrent oaf, and she was, you know, just a woman who didn't want to give it up without being married. Saying that probably would have got me killed 500 years ago, but that's the thing about oppression, you can only silence people while you're alive. Your legacy speaks for itself when you're dead, so take that, King Henry VIII. You fatty. Anyway, poor Anne Boleyn of course ended up being locked in the Tower of London and then beheaded by her abhorrent husband. Life wasn't always so sad for her though. She actually grew up pretty happy with her sister Mary in Hever Castle in England. It is said that every Christmas Eve the ghost of Anne Boleyn can be spotted at this very castle in Kent, gliding around the grounds and across the bridge over the River Eden.
At number 3 we have Frau Perchta. After reading about this urban legend, it made me happy that we settled on Santa. He's so nice and he's not as extreme as these other people on this list. Frau Perchta didn't mess around. She was super mean. If you heard about this legend when you were a kid, I bet you would be good all year round. Frau Perchta would walk around during Christmas time and knock on people's doors. When you answered, she would then check her naughty list and do one of two things. If you had been a good kid, she would give you a silver coin. Like, there you go kid, don't spend it all in one place. But if you were a bad kid, she would cut open your stomach and rip out your insides. Whoa, I forgot to take out the garbage a couple times. It doesn't mean you have to disembowel me, I'm not that bad. Also, if this is the lottery we're playing, you have to give me something better than a silver coin. The game is literally silver coin or death. Who would play that?
Moving on to number 2 now guys, we have Belsnickel. If you're watching this from a Germanic speaking country, you may be familiar already with this story. In that part of the world, the Belsnickel is a fur-clad Christmas gift bringer. He has a long tongue and is typically very ragged and dishevelled. His clothes are dirty and ripped, and he's known for beating misbehaved children with a stick. He's a mythical creature that serves as an almost anti-Santa like creature. If it's Santa's job to deliver joy and presents, it's the Belsnickel's job to make sure they deserve it.
Finally, coming into number 1, I enjoyed this legend the most, but it is pretty scary. We have the legend of, correct my pronunciation, Jola Kotorin. Good. Thank you, Iceland. So yeah, beware Jolak Kotorin, the nasty killer cat. This ain't no household cutie kitty. Absolutely not. The Icelandic Yule cat is part of a tradition of new clothes at Christmas. Good people, children and adults alike, are supposed to receive new clothes to wear for Christmas Eve. If a person receives new clothes, they're hardworking. If they don't, they're said to be lazy. The Yule cat is the pet of a giantess, and it is said that she prowls the snowy countryside to set upon anyone who hasn't received new clothes. The cat will then gobble down the unfortunate soul, leaving no trace.